Hello, I'm Michael Cantrell, and you are listening to the Prison Officer Podcast, a place to have a conversation about the forgotten cops that work in this country's jails, prisons, and correctional centers. A place for me to try to make sense of a career spent working inside the fence with some of the greatest people that nobody sees or recognizes for the important job they do to keep this world safe. If you love this podcast, hit the follow button, or better yet, share with your family, friends, or coworkers. In more than 28 years of corrections, I have used or supervised pepperball hundreds of times. Now, as a master instructor for pepperball, I teach others about the versatility and effectiveness of the pepperball system. From cell extractions to disturbances on the rec yard, pepperball is the first option in my correctional toolbox. With the ability to transition quickly from area saturation to direct impact with the non-lethal PAVA projectiles, pepperball provides me with a range of non-lethal options for cell extractions involving non-compliant inmates, and when the use of force is over, decontamination is easy, with no oily residue on the walls or floors. To learn more about pepperball, go to www.pepperball.com or click the show notes below. Pepperball is the safer option first. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. My name's Mike Cantrell. And today I have a guest that I've watched his writing for a long time, but this will be the first time that I've got to sit down and interview him. Gary York. He's the author of Corruption Behind Bars, Inside the Inner Circle, and The Toughest Job. Those are his books that he's got out right now, and we'll talk to him about those. Gary served in the United States Army from 1978 to 1987 and was honorably discharged at the rank of Staff Sergeant from the MP Corps. He was a military police squad leader and later a security shift supervisor at the U.S. Central Command. Gary then began a career with the Department of Corrections as a correctional officer and was promoted to probation officer, senior probation officer, and senior prison inspector, where for the next 12 years he conducted criminal, civil, and administrative investigations in many different state prisons. In 1991, Gary received a leadership award from the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers, and in 1998 he was the statewide Senior Prison Inspector of the Year, received honors from the Civil Criminal Division in Washington, D.C. for his work in wrongful death investigation, and in 2004 he worked on a program with the Department of Justice for in-custody death training for the prison system in, and I probably won't get this right, Tashkent, Uzbekistan. After leaving the state prison system, Gary went on to complete 12 more years with the Polk County Sheriff's Office in Florida. He worked at the South County Jail and then as a juvenile drill instructor. He retired as a Master Deputy Bailiff with 28.8 years of service. He's got a master's degree from criminal justice in Florida Metropolitan University and completed a certified public manager's course with Florida State University. He is now a columnist for Corrections One and has a YouTube channel titled True Prison Stories. So welcome to the Prison Officer Podcast, Gary.
Well, thank you very much, and it's really an honor to be here, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Corrections One is where I first ran into some of your writing. We're both columnists there, and you've been doing that for quite a while. So I've been reading your articles for several years. But on this, I always like to start off at the beginning. I like to learn about people and how they got into this crazy business. So where did you grow up, and how was it when you were growing up?
Yes, sir. I grew up in the Southwest, born in El Paso, Texas, but I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and graduated high school in 1977 and joined the United States Army, following in my father's footsteps, who was a Korean War and World War II combat veteran. And so I joined the Army to follow in his footsteps and did 10 years in the Army, and then got out of the service while stationed at U.S. Central Command in Florida and decided to look for a job. And I took a job as a correctional officer just to hold me over, just till I found something else. Right. 28.8 years later, I retired from corrections. I ended up staying there. It was a niche for me. It's not for everybody, I know, but I just took a liking to the corrections career and stuck with it to the end.
So, did you know anything about corrections before? Did you know anybody that was, working that, or it just luck of the draw?
None at all. Of course, I had the 10 years military police experience, but that was road duty in Stuttgart, Germany, and that was security duty at U.S. Central Command. So, yes, I had the military police training, and I knew about the uniform and the Uniform Code of Military Justice laws that we went under. But as far as corrections, when I got out of the service at 28 years old, you could just call me a brand new newbie that needed to be formed and molded into a correctional officer.
Well, absolutely. And that's the way, I had a question just not too long ago from a guy who's 43, and he said, what's the number one thing I need to do being a rookie in this job? And I said, forget that you know anything and be a rookie again. Sometimes that's tough for us, isn't it?
I think that's what went well for me. I went in there, and I always tell young officers this, young people coming into the profession, don't go in there. I don't care how old you are or where you worked before. Don't go into corrections like you know it all, because you don't. It is a whole new world. You have a lot to learn in corrections. So go in like a new piece of clay and learn and absorb and listen to those people that have been around for a while. If you go in as a know-it-all, it's kind of a bad start.
Right. I tell people I was a rookie twice because I worked for the state of Missouri 9 years in, worked at a penitentiary. I knew a lot about corrections when I finally went federal. But when you show up at that new agency, that new joint, nobody cares. They don't want to know what, so stop and listen and be a rookie again.
And you're so right, because I experienced the same thing. I did 17 years for the state and then got offered 18 years in the state, and I got offered a nice job with the sheriff's department. When I went from the state worked my way up to senior prison inspector and went back in the uniform at the sheriff's department, it was start all over again. Now I'm in a jail. This is a little bit different than a prison. Okay, the incarcerated folks are still the same ones. You've learned all that, how to handle them. But as far as the job, I had to be a rookie, as you did, twice.
Right. So, I've been reading your articles for a long time, and I thought I'd just touch on pretty early here. I saw one, it was earlier this year, and I really liked it. It was called Breaking Down the Correctional Officer's Oath. You remember that article?
Yes, sir, I do. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you touch on there several ways about how important it is to remember why we're there and the oath that we took. And I was just going to ask you to kind of expand on some of those thoughts that you had. It says one of them, I will perform my duty with efficiency at all times. And what does that mean when you're talking about that?
Well, you know what? I read the correctional officer oath through my career, and I think a lot of people take the oath and then never look at it again. I could be wrong, but I think I'm on the right track. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to write an article on the correctional officer oath, because if you really take time to read that oath and understand it, it kind of guides you and tells you how you can be successful and how to succeed in corrections.
Right.
Okay, it's not everything, but it's a very good foundation to start with. And if you do your job efficiently and professionally, you are already one step ahead of a whole bunch of folks if you're paying attention to that oath and all the segments of that oath. If you're listening to what it's telling you and you follow that oath as a guideline, in my opinion, that's why I wrote the article, I think it's a great guideline to start with.
Absolutely. I think people forget sometimes about the importance of the work, not everything that goes with it, but going in there and doing your job, doing it the same way every day. I have up there on my bookshelf, I have the post orders from Alcatraz, and I believe it's like 1940. And one of the things that always gets me when I read through that was the post orders for the tower. And they said in those post orders, anytime that you see, and I'm paraphrasing, but anytime that you see a ship or a plane, you should make note of the call letters written on the side, so that when it comes time for you to need to know that information, you are practiced and can recall it. And do we go to our jobs like that every day? Do we practice and pay attention to, doing it right every day so that when it matters, we're ready to do it? And that's just always struck me. And that's kind of what I got from that portion there.
I love that. And, I always have a saying, it's for the military, it's used in corrections as well, head on a swivel every day. And what you think may not be important at the time, it could be important later, as you just described and just gave a fine example. Jot some things down. Always be alert. Anything suspicious in your dorm or on the job or on the perimeter or during transfer, anything suspicious, I always say jot it down, get with your supervisor, and your supervisor may say, hey, we need to do an incident report on that, because I think it's great to have documentation. I did an article on inmate threats need to be documented. We don't just need to hear them and move on. What if that inmate does actually come back 5 weeks later and does something? You documented the verbal threat 5 weeks back. That could save you, or it could help a case too if it went criminal.
Absolutely. I've worked for places where we had the pre-shift gathering or whatever meeting, where you sit down with the lieutenant and everybody talks about the shift for a few minutes before we go inside. And then I've worked at places that didn't have that. And I always thought it was such a good part of our job and made it safer for us to have that 5-10 minutes, even if it was my time that I was giving up. That 5 or 10 minutes for us just to say, hey, did you notice that inmate so-and-so yesterday was acting a little different? And then I saw him over here doing this. And that was just invaluable, I thought, to take the time to do that and that communication of information.
I agree with you. And I think briefings or shift briefings are so important. You hear a lot of people complain, I've got to come in and spend 10 minutes of my time. Well, no. I agree with you. I would rather spend 10 minutes of my time to hear about inmate so-and-so in dorm H that was completely going off last night. He's still acting up, but we've got him, over here in isolation or whatever. But we need to know these things, because I don't want to walk into my dorm blind. I'm also counting on my fellow officer when I walk into that dorm. I know that they're ready to hit the door running. It's been a long 12, 16-hour shift. But just give me 1 minute of your time and tell me what's happening. That's all I ask for. And I'll do the same for the next shift.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. So important. You are still so involved in writing, doing the columns for Corrections 1 and the books you're doing. You teach, and so I see you all the time passing on the knowledge that you got through almost 3 decades of corrections. A lot of people walk away from corrections and law enforcement when they retire. They're like, I'm done. That's it. So what is it that keeps you interested? Why do you push so hard to get that information out there for everyone?
Well, after 38 plus years in government combined with military, police, and corrections, I think there's a lot of people, and I know there's a lot of people because I get a lot of questions asked of me, not just new officers, but some of the older officers give great input. And I think that we need to help anyone coming into the career of corrections, people like you and I, Keith Hellwig, Captain Hellwig from up in Wisconsin, who speaks with me a lot, Anthony Ganji. We just want to help people that are interested in this career to start out right and finish their career safe and go home safe to their families. But also very important, protecting society. So after all those years of me being in uniform, now I'm out of uniform, I still want to help people to safely protect society and safely protect everyone behind the prison walls and jail walls. So if I can do anything at all to help even one officer succeed, I feel like I've contributed something. And I'm not getting paid for any of this. I'm just trying to help the profession and keep it moving.
Absolutely. it's so needed these days. There are a lot of staff coming in. I don't feel like they're getting the training that we did. And I don't know that they're getting the mentorship sometimes that we did when we came into this job. So I do think it's important for you and Ganji and several others that are in this space doing that. So, I kind of jumped ahead because I get excited about talking to you and the articles and the books and stuff. But let me back up a little bit. So you were in the MPs and you went into as a correctional officer. So tell me about when you first started as a correctional officer. When you walk in, that door slams. You're not just dropping the inmate off at booking anymore. You're actually going to go inside and stay with them. Tell me about those first few days or weeks or whatever, and what were your impressions?
Well, I'm not ashamed to say that I got out of the Army around 28 years old, had some life experience, but I'm still not ashamed to say that when my first day alone was, you have dorms 1, 2, and 3. When I started, we had dorms 1 through 12. You have dorms 1, 2, and 3, and what happened? They're connected, and you'd go through different doors to get to each dorm. And I thought maybe they'd start me out with a one dorm alone, or this is state prison, by the way, or 2. But no, you got dorms
Right.
1, 2, and 3. So I go in there, and all eyes are on me because as a new officer, I don't care what your age is. The inmates are testing you out, feeling you out, trying to figure you out. And inside, in my stomach, I had a little nervousness. And I'm not ashamed to say that because that's my first day alone in a dorm with a bunch of inmates, state inmates. So I always knew the sergeants said, we're available. And matter of fact, the 2 sergeants that were my sergeants back then are still my friends today, by the way.
Nice.
We stayed together that long, and my wife as well, who retired from corrections. They know her as well. But it took me a while to get my feet under me, and I remember asking a lot of questions. And sometimes this is after training, after the academy, after my on the job training with an officer. Now I'm by myself, but I always tell people, don't be afraid to ask a question. Don't drive your sergeant crazy or somebody else crazy with every little question. You have to figure some things out on your own. But ask a question. It could be the difference between right and wrong. And it's just a lot to
That's
take
a good way
in.
to put it. Yeah, absolutely. So you do that for a few years. You move up, and you became an investigator in that same department, correct?
Correct. After I'm an officer, I get a call to put in for probation and parole. I had asked about probation and parole when I first came in. They didn't respond, so I just forgot about them. But then I get a call to put in for it. And next thing I know, I'm in the probation and parole academy to be a felony probation officer. And I worked that in Tampa, Florida. One was in a rural area, and then I got promoted to probation officer 2, and they put me in Ybor City, Florida, on a higher risk caseload, a little more high profile offender caseload on that second go round.
Okay. And then from there, well, first, how did you like doing probation and parole instead of corrections? I mean, there's a huge difference in the parole officers I've talked to. What did you think about that?
I liked it. There's a lot of paperwork involved. As a matter of fact, today I still have correctional officers get a hold of me and say, hey, when you transition from correctional officer to probation officer, what was it like? I'm thinking about going to probation and parole. And I'll give them the honest answer. You better be ready to do a ton of paperwork. You're going to do violation reports. You're going to have to type your own affidavits to go to the judge, criminal affidavits. You're going to have to type your own warrants to go to the judge. You're going to have to keep notes on every one of these offenders. You're going to have to keep up with the restitution they owe. You're going to have to keep up with their monthly probation fee. That's all on you to keep up with that. You better be ready to be just this high and, deep, knee deep in paperwork, not to count going out to their jobs, going out to their homes, having them come to the office of it. Probation and parole, I enjoyed it, but let me tell you, It's not easy. I've learned in the criminal justice system, I don't know if there is an easy job, to be honest with you.
Right. I've got a friend of mine, police officer, and he always says, man, I don't know how you work in prison. And I say, well, I don't know how you work on the street, you know. You're always walking up on people, don't know if they're good and bad. Probation and parole's kind of in the middle there. You're kind of dealing with inmates, but on the street. So is it easier to work with the inmates in probation and parole, or easier when they're in more controlled situation in corrections? Or just different?
I didn't have them up on me all day. You know, in prison, they're up on you all day. They're all around you. At any given moment, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. Probation and parole is dangerous as well. When you go to their home for a home visit, now you're in their home field. They have home field advantage, I call it. You could get hurt out there,
I bet, in
their neighborhood or in their home. But you didn't see them as often. You saw them about 3 times a month. And then later on, if it's a high-profile offender, you'll see them twice a week to 3 to 4 times a week. But they're not up on you. You're more open, you're more freedom. And they're trying not to get violated for probation, so they're trying to be good. And I use the word trying lightly because many of them are out there violating again, you know. They just don't want you to know.
Some of them are trying to be good. Some of them are trying not to get caught.
That's the perfect way to say that.
Yeah. So what made you take the step from probation and parole to doing the investigator job?
That is such a crazy story. I had 2 of my fellow probation officers come up to me. You know, there's an opening for prison inspector. You would be great for that. I said, really? Yeah, you should put in for that. I didn't even know there was an opening. And I said, well, I don't think I have a shot at it, you know. They've got folks that they have seen for, 10 years or more that they probably like. And they said, well, just put in for it. What's it going to hurt? I put in for prison inspector. And I go interview with about 20 people. I remember the interview day. And I'm thinking, I don't have a chance, but let me give it a shot. And I went in there and interviewed with the chief inspector from Tallahassee, Florida, the regional supervisor that I would be working for, and the criminal attorney, or the attorney for the Florida Department of Corrections. You know, they had several attorneys. He was the head attorney. And I did my interview, and I walked out, and I thought I would never hear anything. And next thing I know, I get a call from the chief inspector in Tallahassee saying, you were just promoted to probation officer 2 not long ago, but I guess we'll go ahead and give you another 10% increase. Welcome to the inspector general's office. From there, I did 12 years with them.
And you hadn't been doing investigations before that?
They knew that I had that criminal justice degree. They knew that I had military police background, and they knew that I had correctional officer and probation officer background. Later on, the regional director told me, Gary, you were picked, because they called me too and asked me about you, because there was a regional director of probation and parole. He said, they called me and asked me about you, and everybody agreed you had just the right mixture of everything. Yeah, you may not have been a street cop here, but you were a military policeman in a patrol car. So he said you got the job because you had the right mixture of everything, because you do investigate prisons, work release centers. You will be investigating probation and parole issues, and you will be working with law enforcement on the street. So that was the answer they gave me. I had a mixture of everything.
So was this internal affairs as well as inmate cases?
That's what it was. We're called here in Florida prison inspectors, but what we do is criminal, civil, and administrative investigations throughout the state of Florida. Internal affairs is what it is. It's just another name we use.
Okay. Well, and maybe this is where it comes from. You could tell me. I notice a lot of your articles and things you talk about have to do with manipulation and manipulation from inmates. Is that where you learned a bunch of that and got to see a bunch of it?
A lot of it that I talk about in my articles comes from the prison inspector side, because I would not only do the investigations and see what some of the bad apples are doing, but I also would interview those folks when they got caught and learn how the inmate manipulated them into doing some of these things. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, everybody's an adult in uniform or working behind the walls, civilians, medical people. They know right from wrong. So I'm not making an excuse. But there are some people that go into corrections with no intent of doing bad. And next thing you know, they've got an inmate who's totally manipulated their mind and controlled them.
Right. I love teaching classes on inmate manipulation. I did investigations for a while. So like you, I got to hear the full story, not just see the end of it. And so I like to take that, and when I get to talk to rookies, one of the things I tell them that's almost universal, when that thing in your gut, like you said, right and wrong, when that tells you that something's not right, if you will walk across the hall to the sergeant's office, the lieutenant's office, I don't care what, and tell them what's happening at that point, we could 99% of the time save your job. It's always when they let it go.
You're absolutely right. And I see a lot of your articles, and one day I'm going to be able to write as good as you, and that's my goal. I like your articles. They're very well written and very, very informative. And I have the knowledge in my head. Sometimes for me to get it on paper is a little more difficult, but I get it out there somehow. But what you just said is so true. And there's a fear among officers to report. And you know what I'm talking about. Oh, I can't snitch. I'm going to be an outcast. Well, if you've done an investigation, you know what I'm talking about. If you are found in an investigation that you knew this was happening and you didn't report it as you should, you could maybe not get criminal charges, but I've seen a lot of officers, good officers, lose their job for what we call here failure to report.
Right. No, it's so sad to watch. It truly is. Like you said, they are adults and they come in there, but most people growing up, some people do, but most people growing up don't live in families or in communities with the type of manipulation that you're going to face in prison. These are experienced manipulators. They go to criminal college and they learn how to manipulate people, and they're the best. And if you're not ready for that, you can get caught up quick.
They're the best of the best.
Everybody gets manipulated.
They're the best of the best, as you say, of manipulators. That's what they do for a living. That's what they do on the street. Probably did it to their parents. Probably do it to family members. Still do it to family members when they get in prison. I'm in trouble. If you don't send me $300, this guy's going to get me. And there's nobody going to get them. It's just manipulating their family. And it just, that's their life.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love those articles that you do, and I'm going to disagree that you don't write well, because you write very well. I enjoy your articles. And then let's see. So you did that for a while, and then you went to the Polk County Sheriff's Office. So what was the transition there?
I don't know if you've ever heard of Sheriff Grady Judd, but he's the sheriff here in Polk County, and Now I'm in a suit and tie. We had to wear a tie and we carried our briefcase. So now I'm in that stage of my career. But I get offered, my wife and I both get offered a very nice sign-on bonus and a nice little pay increase if we both come over and see the Human Resources Office at the Polk County Sheriff. Now, I'm not too proud to give up my briefcase and give up my tie and give up my state vehicle and go right back into a dorm. And that's what I do. But because they offer more money than the state. See, Florida's a little different. County pays more than the state. So I go back in uniform and bam, there I am, a rookie, as we spoke of earlier. I'm a rookie again in the county jail going through there. I didn't have to go through the academy again because it's all the same for the state and county here in the state. But I had to go through a 5-week training program there, and I had to pass a polygraph, a psychological. I had to pass a physical fitness test. It's a little obstacle course that the sheriff has. Sheriff Grady Judd not only wants you to shoot the course required by Florida, the state of Florida, but he also implements his own shooting course, which is much faster and less time. So it was a lot more detailed and more training. No offense to the state, but Sheriff Judd doesn't mess around. You got to pass these things.
Yeah. So what was your thoughts on the number one difference between prison, state corrections, and jail? Because the work is different. The use of forces are different. Everything's different. What did you take away?
My wife and I would come home and go, oh, my God, the fast pace. State, you're there forever. Medical call out, you put the sheet up, or at least we did the night before. The inmates go on their own to medical, go on their own to dental, go on their own to their job assignment, not in the jail. Everybody is escorted, So I'm in the dorm, and I'm cut loose on my own, and it's count time. And the nurse is standing back there ready to pass meds. Ma'am, we're going to have to count real quick, and then you can pass your meds. Attorney booth is calling. Hey, I need these inmates sent now. Dental is calling. I need these inmates. Court's calling. I need these added on to afternoon court. It is just full-blown go, go, go. At the same time, you're doing your logs and doing all these things. Anybody that wants to go from state to county, okay, you may get more money, but be ready. This is very fast-paced, and you think your blood pressure's up. Wait till you have to do all these things with two hands.
Now, I didn't have this question on here, but you've mentioned it a couple of times that you and your wife both work in corrections. So how's that as a dynamic? When you come home, do you guys just not talk about work? Did it help you get through that by having another person that understood you in the home? Tell me a little bit about being married to someone who works in corrections too.
We both agreed it helped that we were both in corrections, because we might spend the first 30 minutes at home talking about it, getting it out of our system. And then the rest of the night we go on with our nightly duties, with the family. But I think it was better for both of us. There's things we could both understand. And I know for a lot of spouses, male or female, that are not in corrections and their spouse comes home, it's got to be kind of hard to understand why your spouse is so worn out, why your spouse seems hyper and not calm yet, the blood pressure hasn't dropped yet or whatever, why your spouse may be a little tense and jumpy, not jumpy, but edgy. Edgy is the word I'm looking for. Your body has to calm down from that climate. And I think it's a little tough sometimes for spouses to understand that are not in the business. Absolutely.
Yeah, my wife's been on here a couple of times. We've talked about that there was a lot of stuff she just didn't understand, or we'd go to a party and we're all talking about work and we forget that anybody else exists. It's all about the job. And so it's interesting to hear that other side where you guys actually had that little bit of time where you could decompress, talk about it, and then, okay, now it's back to our life. So that's interesting. So I'm interested in this too. A juvenile drill instructor. I've seen those programs, never got to be involved. What was your take on being a drill instructor for the juveniles?
That was one of my favorite jobs in my whole career until they shut down the juvenile boot camps in Florida. I put in for the juvenile drill instructor position. So I left the jail and went to the juvenile boot camp, and it wasn't called a boot camp anymore. They called it the STAR program, and we would have our own bay of cadets. So I would be assigned to 12 or 15 cadets in Squad Bay 2 or 3, wherever I was at, and you would work with these kids age 14 to 18, might have a 19-year-old in there sometimes. Right. They're on a program that's going to make them or break them. They have the choice to go to jail or prison, and the judge says, if you complete this juvenile boot camp successfully, you won't have to go to jail or prison.
Right.
we had a full-scale high school, and I would have to be at work at 5 a.m.
Wow.
5 a.m. briefing, and then 6 a.m. we would be out there with the juveniles to do physical fitness training. Now, you don't just watch them do physical fitness. They taught me right off the bat, you're going to run that 2 miles with them every morning. You're going to do the calisthenics with them. So when I'm up on that big podium telling them, now we're going to do 30 push-ups, ready, move, they told me a little trick. Don't ever pick an amount of push-ups that you can't do. In other words,
Right.
if you can't do 40 push-ups, don't say we're going to do 40 push-ups, because they can do them. These guys, these are young juveniles. If you can't do those 40 push-ups, you've lost some respect with these juveniles.
Right.
So I'm learning some things about, the juvenile mind and how. So when you run with them and exercise with them, you're building some rapport and some respect. You're doing what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to climb a rope. Well, I had to climb the rope in the 5-week training to be the juvenile drill instructor. Don't ask them to do something you can't do. You can't get over that wall. You're not going to be a juvenile drill instructor. They don't want that. They want somebody that can do the same things you're asking them to do. After that, they would go to chow.
Mm-hmm.
After chow, march them to science class. March them from science class to a little break, and then march them to English class. At the end of all the school, you'd have lunch, of course, and then at the end of all the school, give them some quiet time and get prepared to come out, iron your uniform, shower, shine your boots, study for your classes. It was a great program, and I really enjoyed doing that to see some of them succeed. I say some didn't make it.
Yeah. But you did get to see that, though. You saw some who took the opportunity to learn that discipline and see that example, and they did better.
Drill instructors would always be so proud when a year later one would come back. Drill instructor York, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I say, hey, you're a free man now. You don't have to do all that. What you got? Just want to let you know that I completed a college degree, or this is my wife and my child. Just wanted you to meet them, and I'm doing great, and I'm working a full-time job. And man, that hit me in the heart, because now I'm doing something in corrections that is changing somebody's life, and I love that job. And then the state shut the program down, and we were so sad. Sheriff Judd fought hard to keep that program. It was a good program.
Wow. That's too bad, because it is, we don't get that opportunity to interact with the public in a positive way like that, or even, the juveniles are criminal.
Their parents would get to know us.
So rare that
their parents would get to know us as well. They had visitation, and their parents ended up knowing. I'm like a school teacher, oh, drill instructor York is my son's drill instructor. One of the cadets who was a mean little guy, is still in touch with me today, believe it or not. He makes 6 figures, and he trains dogs, and he gets them out of Georgia from law enforcement training here, and he brings them up to New York, and has a 6-figure business now. He has 6 cars out, bed bugs, and he sends these dogs to these very fancy New York hotels and checks for bed bugs. Gets paid huge money. This kid has surpassed me by miles. Yeah, I don't make that kind of money.
Wow. That's great. Yeah, that's got to feel good. That's got to feel good when you put your head on the pillow to know that you affected some of those lives like that. Well, one of the things I love about doing these interviews on the podcast is, of course, I get to know the people who come on here better. And you've had quite a varied career, MP, inspector, correctional officer, author. But did I see television star on your resume?
Well, I don't know if I have it on my resume. You might have saw it on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Well, that's because of the book Corruption Behind Bars. I didn't go put in for this. I'm at home one night with my wife, and I get this phone call. And, hello, I'm a casting director for Showtime. Yes, sir. And I thought, boy, this is a joke.
Right.
Somebody's playing a joke on me. We're doing Escape at Dinamora, and Ben Stiller, would like to use as many real officers as he can for the extras. And we need a control room officer for episode 5. You think you'd be interested? We'll pay you. We'll fly you up, put you in a hotel in Queens. We'll give you transportation to Staten Island to go to that old prison where they filmed it. For that part, they filmed a lot of it.
Right.
And long story short, I have a little blurb there signing in Joyce Mitchell in the control room. So, that was a very surprising phone call.
Yeah, I just picked that up when I was doing a little research on you, and I'm going to have to go back and watch Escape from Dannemora now and go back to that part and see you there. But I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So let's talk about your books. I know you've had, Inside the Inner Circle and Corruption Behind Bars. Your newest one is The Toughest Job, correct?
Yes, The Toughest Job. I wanted to write something to let people know that our job is not easy. In the book, I have one chapter from Anthony Ganji on the manipulation issue, because he's big into inmate manipulation studies and practices. Absolutely. As well. So I said, boy, he would be great for the inmate manipulation part. I have Captain Keith Helwig from Wisconsin in there. I have Dr. Michael Patero from the American Military University providing a chapter in there. And then I have... at the first chapter, quotes from correctional officers around the world. I got one from Germany, one from Canada, several from the United States, just to give me a paragraph each on what they feel being a correctional officer is. And I started the book out with that chapter.
Right.
And then I have a lot of scenarios in there. I have a lot of real life scenarios that really happened in that book. It's not a long book. It's only $8 or $2.99 for the Kindle, but I have gotten feedback that not just my writings in there, but those other people I just mentioned, their writings have helped open their eyes a lot to see just how tough this job is. It also has a chapter about the stressors, the post-traumatic stress disorder, the alcoholism, the lifespan of a correctional officer. I just tried to, that's why I called it The Toughest Job, Correctional Officer USA. For those folks that don't know about corrections, I want them to know how tough it is.
Yeah, and I'll just go to the book here for a minute. Chapter 2, you talk about just some statistics that most people probably don't know. You write, as of the most recent 2020 and 2021 reports, I found data that indicates correctional officers are approximately 71% male, 28% female. And of those, 62% white, 21% black, 11 Hispanic, and 1% Asian, 5% unknown. The educational level is determined to be 64% have some college experience, 25% have a college degree, and 25% of the officers who have a college degree, 19% have a bachelor's, 4.5% have a master's degree, and 1.5% have a PhD. I don't think people realize that. But the saddest statistics is that correctional officers have the second highest mortality rate of any occupation. Of all assaults committed in prisons or jails, 33.5% of them are by inmates against staff. Other types of assaults also include inmates against inmates and improper use of force by officers against inmates. Other sad statistic is that on average, a correctional officer will live 18 months after retirement, will have been assaulted at least twice in a 20 to 25-year career. And the average death age for a correctional officer is 58. They have a 39% higher rate of suicide, 39% higher than any other occupation, and higher divorce and substance abuse rates than the general public. Those are some sobering statistics.
It's mind-blowing. And, I thought to myself, it's hard to believe, age 58 and a lot of officers die within 5 years after retirement. And I was talking to a retired captain and a retired deputy that are friends of mine, and we go fishing together. And we went over the people that have retired with us that are not with us anymore. And we started thinking, wow, we did not, until you start to talk about it with fellow officers, You don't realize how many of your retired folks who were retired in a general area that you did are not with us anymore. It's just unbelievable to me.
Right. I think social media has made me more aware because I get to see what's going on, and whether it's suicide or people who've passed away after they retired, we get to see that on our social media links, from every job I've had before. And I think it seems even worse to me. I think this year, and I may be wrong, but the suicide rate in the last couple of years, at least in my bubble, the people I know, has really gone up. And what can we do about that? What do you tell people when they ask about that?
It's very sad. I tell officers, look, I know that you're working 12-hour shifts that turn into 16-hour shifts. I've even talked to some that had to stay 20 hours, and we've all done that.
Yep.
And it's rough on the body, rough on the mind. It's stressful. And I tell officers, can you do a hobby that gets you out of the house when you can on the spare? It's hard because you do all these hours and then you still have to come home, mow your lawn, clean the house, cook, all that. Where's the time for it? I always say, try to take 20 minutes a day for some kind of a mental break. Go for a walk. Do some kind of exercise. On the day off, if you like the outdoors, go do something outdoors. If you like bowling, go bowling. Do something to get your mind away, but will also help you. And I know exercise is not the answer to cure everything, but I'm a true believer. If you could fit 3 days a week, 20, 30 minutes a day, fit it in somewhere, some kind of exercise, fast walking, jogging, jump rope, punching bags are great, to let your stress out on. Do it if you can. Right. It really helps to just get that steam out of you and blow off. And if you see that you're starting to drink too much or take too many ibuprofen to get through the day and it gets to leading to other type pills, please ask for help. That's the biggie right there. Ask for help. There's a guy named William Young out there. This is kind of his is his area of expertise. He was on Phil Donahue's show. Well, he that's what he does. He practices or he preaches ask for help. Ask for help. And let's officers know you're not weak for asking for help. It takes a strong person to ask for help. So, those are some of the things I try to tell folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had William on here about 10 episodes ago, and we talked about some of that stuff. One thing I tell people is we've got to listen to each other, because rarely does a correctional officer stand up and say very loud that I need help. It's usually it's very quiet, and you have to listen to hear it. As we talked about inmates being master manipulators, we are masters. Correctional officers are at hiding our feelings, hiding what's bothering us. We have to hide that when we walk through that grill so that the inmates can't attack us personally and get into that, inner sanctum. Well, with that, we're able to hide it when we're having problems. So I tell people, reach out to that neighbor and ask them how they're doing, and then ask that officer, and stop and listen. Listen for the clues, because I think sometimes we just say, how you doing today? I'll see you later. And we don't take that moment. So
exactly.
Yeah,
we as officers, I always call it a force shield. We have a force shield, and we don't want to drop that force shield because we can't be seen as weak, and that you've got to stop that. And I love that point you made. As fellow officers, you see somebody that looks like they're in trouble, please go and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you working on next? You got another book you're going to put out, or?
I got a traditional publisher after all these self-published books, and it'll be out October 1st. And what they asked me to do, and I have no control over the price or anything. They do all that. When you do traditional publisher,
sure,
they're going to make the cover, the editing, the formatting, and the price. So my books aren't very expensive. I don't know what they're going to charge. I have no control over that. They asked for the best chapters of these 3 books we talked about today. And then they wanted 50% new material. And I did a little different on this one. I not only talked about the officers, what they go through, but I talked about some of the things inmates go through. So this one's going to have a little bit different twist. We're going to talk about the officers' day, the inmates' day, and 50% new material and 50% from these 3 books.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that. When you get that out there, let me know, and we'll have you back on, and we'll talk about that book too.
I sure will. Thank you.
So if someone wants to see your books, or if they want to get in contact with you, give me a little contact info there.
They can get a hold of me at through LinkedIn, which has my email. My phone number's on there too. It has to be because that's how some people have called me. The books are on Amazon, so if you just Google Gary York, Corruption Behind Bars, all 3 books will pop up, or Gary York, The Toughest Job. All 3 books will pop up in a row. They're available on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. I have a prison YouTube, True Prison Stories, where a lot of people say, hey, just saw this video. Can I talk to you in private? And I'll shoot them my email. I think that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I thank you a lot for coming on here and talking to us and sharing your story and your thoughts on this. And I look forward to the next time we get together.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, and it's an honor. I've seen your articles and I've seen your channel, and I appreciate what you do for the corrections world and law enforcement world in general. And thank you for everything.
Thank you, Gary. You have a great day.
You too.
I would like to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors that make the Prison Officer Podcast possible. Omni RTLS is a company that I've been working with for the last year. I am proud to be part of this team of correctional professionals who have developed the best real-time locating system on the market today. With Omni's real-time location technology, you automatically know the accurate locations and interactions of all inmates, staff, and assets anywhere in your correctional facility, and you have this information in real time. Omni is cutting-edge software for today's jails and prisons. It is the only way to monitor every square inch of your facility while still being PREA compliant. Go to www.omnirtls for more information and to make your facility safer today. That's www.omnirtls.com. If you enjoy these podcasts, the best way to support the Prisoner Officer Podcast is to share these episodes with your friends or family on social media. Let me invite you to visit www.theprisonofficer.com. If you haven't already, check out the Prison Officer Podcast on Facebook and click that little follow button. Or leave us a message, or better yet, leave us a review. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Google, or Spotify, please click the subscribe button. Until next time, I'm Mike Cantrell. Watch your back, and please take care of each other out there behind those walls.